Rack and stack, installing wireless access points. By the time we're done here, you will be able to select, install, and perform basic channel selection on a wireless access point. My friend, we are looking really good. We've got cable management installed to where everything is neat and organized in the MDF, and now we can reach outside of there to install the wireless access point to extend the wired network into the air for all of the wireless devices that our customer will have. I'm going to have to exercise a lot of restraint as I talk about this because wireless is so vast with the amount of situations you can run into. It's not so much the configurations, it's the situations, and I'll explain that more. But let's start off with the basics. A wireless access point is the device that translates a wire, meaning you'd have a cable coming in like this, into a wireless signal so wireless devices can attach. Most people recognize them as something that looks like this if they're coming from a home environment, and that's an integrated device where you have your internet connection that plugs into the back of that, and it has a router built in, and you might have some wires out for some wired devices. But for the most part, it then translates that into a wireless signal and does all of the routing necessary to get it out to the internet, because the fact is most devices purchased nowadays are wireless. Smartphones, laptops, tablets, they all use wireless signal rather than a wired connection. But when you get into larger environments, you want to go with dedicated devices. You don't want to use these integrated devices because you don't need router functionality everywhere. You want to go with something like this, or even this, where you have a wireless access point that just does the translation. You would plug a cable into it, which you don't see here. There'd be a cable going there, a cable going there. That device then broadcasts the wireless signal within an area. Now, I want to make sure you guys catch that wireless is a step backwards in terms of stability, forward in flexibility. Meaning, when it comes to a wired versus a wireless connection, if you've gone through all the videos in this series, you know what I'm talking about. The wired is always preferred. It's always going to be more stable because a wireless device is susceptible to interference. Now, we're getting better at handling things like that, but I don't think we'll ever reach the point where a wireless signal is more stable than the wire itself. Remember, we're feeding it a wire. It can only go down from there. So there is a variety of wireless standards that are available out there that are all defined as 802.11. That is a family of standards. If I hop on over to Wikipedia, you can see there's 802.11, and then as we go down, A, B, G, N, A, C, A, D, A, F, all of these have different features available to them. Some of them are designed for outdoor use. Some of them are for indoor use. Some of them are higher speed. Some of them are different frequency. So all these different standards that we have available give us the flexibility to fit wireless in just about any environment. Wireless networks work over these three primary frequencies. Well, actually two. 900 megahertz is so old and slow that nobody really uses it anymore. 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz is the way to go. And we'll talk more about the frequencies in just a moment. For now, I just want you to know that they are unlicensed. And that sounds bad when you first say it that way, but it's actually really good. Licensed frequencies are those that you have to pay to use. I don't know if any of you ever saw it. Back in the 1980s, there was this movie called Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater. And he runs a pirate radio station in his dorm room. And he eventually gets busted because you can't do that. You have to pay the government in the United States, that's the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, to use certain frequencies on those spectrums. Otherwise, you wouldn't have all kinds of people that make up their own radio station and they'd overlap and there'd be a nightmare of anybody trying to get a clean signal. Well, that's not that way with wireless network. You can bring up a wireless network whenever and wherever you want. Now, the government does restrict the kinds of devices and the power of the devices that can be used in the unlicensed frequency spectrum. They don't want people bringing up devices that are so powerful that other people can't bring their own devices up in that same range because they all get overwhelmed. That's why you see businesses with hundreds of wireless access points in a large building spanned all the way across because the wireless access points can only be so powerful, and the radios on the devices like your cell phone and your tablet and your laptop can only be so powerful, not just for interference, but the more powerful that radio is, the more battery it uses. Nobody wants a cell phone that dies in 5 minutes, and nobody wants to carry a cell phone that has a battery pack like this. My dad used to have one of those cell phones. He was so proud. It sure is funny to me when I look at that image to think just how far we've come. Nonetheless, last puzzle piece is security. Wireless access points support simple security that's known as pre-shared key. And that's where you have your client device where you type in the secret key on this side, let's say 555-111. And then on this side, you type in the same pre-shared key 555-1111, and it compares the two and says, oh, okay, you're good, you're connected. And that's great for small networks. But the problem is, as you get larger and larger and you've got 100 employees, what happens when someone leaves the company? You now have to change the pre-shared key for everybody, which is a huge overhead because not everybody is familiar with typing in a new key into their laptop or smartphone or things like that, and it causes IT to have to get involved. So more complex security was developed, known as the Extensible Authentication Protocol, or 802.1x. Those are really two words for the same thing. One is the common name, one is the standard. What that is where these guys rely on other devices to do the authentication. So for example, I could have a laptop that comes in, and instead of having a pre-shared key, it would say, my username is Bob, right? And this guy would be tied to a server somewhere, and that server would have a big list of all the users, and it would say, hey, Bob wants to get in, and he says his password is whatever. And the server goes, oh yeah, that password's correct, let him in, and now Bob is allowed on. The beauty then is I can disable Bob when he leaves the company, and now anybody that tries to log on with that username will fail. Okay, let's talk about installing wireless access points. Not just physically speaking, but I mean, real world. How do you really get this done from a range and frequencies, and how much stuff can I jam into one slide is really what I'm after here. So first off, understand that just about every wireless access point that you install in companies today will be omnidirectional. That means they radiate their signal equally in all directions, at least from a horizontal perspective. So if I have this wireless access point in the ceiling right here, if I were to go this way or that way or this way, I'm going to get that equal signal. Another way, you'll see these often in the technical nitty-gritty details of wireless access point. They're known as radiation graphs. The way to think of them is kind of put them on a XY. So here's your x-axis and here's your y, and there's your wireless access point. And you and I stand at the top of this y graph, right? And we look down. What are we going to see? We'll see, if we could actually see the radiation, we could see the signal going this way and this way. It's kind of like a slice horizontally. And that's what this is meant to represent, is we would see that same slice going all the way around right there. But if we were to walk down here, tick, 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 down to the x-axis and stand and look at the wireless access point this way, then we'd actually see the vertical graph, right? How far up and down that wireless access point is transmitting. And you can see that one's not too much. Now, you might say, well, what's that? Well, remember, you're standing there, you're going to get hit in the face from a signal perspective. You're still seeing that horizontal slice. That's what this big chunk is right here. But vertically, meaning from the ceiling to the floor, and then from the ceiling up into the floor above or into the roof, is not very much, and that's good. We don't want to pummel the floor with wireless signal. We really want to see how far we can reach where people can use it. Now, the actual range of most wireless access points will be advertised as about 100 meters or 330 feet, but that is not reality. Not reality at all. First off, that's an outdoor range, meaning you're in the middle of a grassy field with no drywall or no ceilings or anything else that could absorb that signal. And even if you were running a wireless network in a grassy field, the wireless access point might reach out 100 meters, but your little cell phone won't actually be able to get back. You'll see a lot of devices where you see a signal and you try to join it, and it's like joining, fail. It's because this guy can actually see it coming in, but it will never have a transmitter as powerful as that wireless access point to get back. The reason I say that is the rule of wireless access points is to put them close and turn down the power. Actually turn them down to the point where they don't interfere with each other, and yet they're able to provide a really powerful signal to the devices that are sitting within their range. You also want to think about users. Think about a 30 user maximum per WAP. A lot of times you'll sit there with a floor plan and say, okay, well, I'll put one here and here, and you're kind of plotting it out based on the obstructions and drywall. And by the way, metal is death to wireless signals. Glass will distort the signal, so windows, things like that. Metal is completely blocks wireless signals. So you got to think about elevator shafts and, electrical rooms. And sometimes you really plot it out on a floor plan first, and you forget about the fact that you might, maybe you're doing it for a school, and there's the teacher's lounge, or there's a general cafeteria where hundreds of students will all jump on at the same time. So you got to think beyond a range. Each one of these should be spec'd out to where about 30 users maximum join before you need another wireless access point in that area. Mounting angles means that it should be mounted vertically or horizontally. Never prop it up diagonally. You're messing with the antenna polarization. You're going to get poor signal if you put it at like a 45 or a 20-degree angle. Do flat 90 angles. Either mount it flat on the ceiling or flat on the wall. Obstacles I talked about. Main one, avoid metal. Now let's talk about the frequencies and unpack those a little bit more. You have two primary frequencies that you can buy wireless access points for, 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. You'll see some wireless access point that actually supports both frequency spectrums at the same time. It actually has antennas for both of them. The benefit of 2.4 gigahertz is range. This one travels farther than 5 gigahertz. Whereas 5 gigahertz has the benefit of speed as well as clean channels. If you've ever configured a wireless access point for your house before, you'll know that one of the options that you have is what channel do you want to use. And most home wireless access points, by the way, are 2.4 gigahertz because most people in their home are interested in range. I want to cover most of my house. And people will see that the channel selection gives them the ability to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they'll just pick one or they'll leave it on auto and let the wireless access point pick whichever channel it feels is best. Now, one of the things to realize is that these channels actually represent frequency ranges. When we say 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, that's actually a large range in which we divide it into multiple channels. Now look at this. Channel 1 takes from 2.400 all the way up to 2.422 because each one of these channels represents 22 megahertz of that. Megahertz, gigahertz, so megahertz, there's 1,000 megahertz in a gigahertz. It's kind of like kilobytes, et cetera, right? You follow that. So take a look at what channel 2 does. Right there. Channel 3, right there. Channel 4, what's the problem with these channels? They overlap. And anytime you have overlapping channels, you're going to get interference and you're going to get poor performance out of your wireless. Sometimes no performance depending on how heavy that interference is. So one of the first things you have to realize is in the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, I just can't draw my circles today. In the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, you only have 3 clean channels that you can use, 1, 6, and 11. The reason why is because those are the ones that do not overlap in their frequencies at all. It kills me when I come into a neighborhood, like obviously you become the IT guy for your family and relatives and stuff like that, and you go over and try and set up somebody's wireless network, and you come into a house and you're trying to find a clean channel, and they find out the neighbor has set their channel to 3. Oh, you're killing me. Because what that does is now mess up my 2 clean channels because they're stepping in both of my ranges. Now, I slam my fist on the table and I say, who do I complain to? Nobody. That's the beauty and the pain of these unlicensed frequencies, right? There's nobody that's going to take that complaint, but I have, and I've done this before, gone to the neighbor's house and I say, excuse me, hi, I'm right there. I'm actually setting up their wireless network. And usually once I explain myself, they're like, actually, I've had somebody tell me, no, I'm actually not going to change my channel. But most of them, I've done this with 2 or 3 people now, have said, yeah, we'll change our channel. So they'll put it back to 1 or 6 or 11, which now allows us to share space happily between these 2 homes without interfering with each other. This is the huge benefit of the 5 gigahertz spectrum. 5 gigahertz has many clean channels that we're able to use. And you can see on this little graph, Uni 1, Uni 2, Uni 2E. These are all different spectrums of the 5 gigahertz that have been spread out over the years. We keep coming out with more because we need more space, right? And each one's kind of designated for its own use, and each one is governed by the country that you're in. So you might be in one country and they don't let you use Uni 3, whereas another country does. When you first set up a wireless access point, that's one of the first questions it'll ask is, what country is this being used for? And when you select it, it will actually restrict or allow certain bands that you're able to use for the equipment that's allowed in that country. Now, the beauty of 5 gigahertz, and this is where that speed comes in, is they've found ways that they can actually combine multiple channels together. They say, okay, well, let's tie these 2 together into one big channel and thus double our speed. So really, the future of high-performance wireless is in this 5 gigahertz spectrum. The last thing I'll mention is I have yet to see a good automatic selection mechanism. Now, I've seen a lot of them, and some of them work pretty good. Matter of fact, some of the auto selection mechanisms for channels work so well that I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it at that. It's not worth the pain. But what you're supposed to do is lay out a floor plan of your building. And so this is, now we're really into the practical, how do you place these things? You say, okay, well, right here, I've got these walls. So there's my 1, there's my 2. Maybe you've got all these little office spaces and things like that. So you're putting these wireless access points, open areas right there. There's another one. So you're setting these up, and you've got to have a general idea of about how far they're going to radiate, right? They're definitely going to overlap signals. So that's where you come in and then manually assign the channel. So you could say for the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, this will run on channel 1 for this wireless access point. This will be channel 6. So they're overlapping but not interfering with each other, right? This one over here might be channel 11. And you can see it starts getting difficult depending on your placement. You go, okay, well this one, well that'll be channel 1, so I'm not overlapping. So you really have to lay out a plan to minimize the amount of interference that you have between your wireless access points. There's so much more I could say about wireless, but for now we need to get into the physical installation. So let's get this WAP mounted. Well, before we go install the wireless access point, I wanted to go through the puzzle pieces that we have to play with. First off is the wireless access point itself. This is actually a Ubiquiti wireless access point. This will be what mounts on the ceiling. If I flip this over, you can see that we have the Ethernet port right there, and there's a little notch in the actual frame of the wireless access point, so I can take the network cable, plug it in, and it still stays flush mounted against the ceiling. Next to that, I have a power injector. Now, this is if you do not have a power over Ethernet switch. Some of the wireless access point comes with them. It has essentially an in and an out where you can actually send power down the line. You can see that there's actually no power cord on here. It gets its power over Ethernet only. So if you don't have a PoE switch, you have to use one of these. You have the LAN, which is the in that connects to your network, and the PoE, that's out. So usually if you don't have a PoE switch, have a whole bunch of these sitting in your MDF that are just hanging there from the switch as couplers that add power to the line. That's why you want to get a PoE switch. We'll move that out of the picture because I don't want to use that at all. This is the actual backing of the WAP. So if you want to do, for instance, a wall mount, you can just take this, and it comes with the screws right here. You've got some anchors and some drywall screws where you can take this, mount it on the wall, run your Ethernet cable in through that gap. So you'll have to line that up with the hole in the wall that has that, or the wall jack right there. And then this actually snaps onto the back of this right here. You twist it, and it locks in place to where the WAP is mounted. Next up, we have that metal bracket, which confuses a lot of people. Really, if you think of the ceiling tiles, all they are is cardboard that's compressed together, right? So they're not very strong. So what a lot of people will do is use this metal bracket. It actually has a somewhat sharp edge right here on the inside. You'll take this above the ceiling tile and press that in to give it a little bit of backing, so you have a little strength that's holding up the WAP, right? You can see we've got these 3 screw holes, and those line right up to this guy. So think of your ceiling tile. This goes above, chink right there. Hole for the network cable goes right through there, passes through the ceiling. This is where that hole in the ceiling goes, right? Into the wireless access point, and then this screws on below it, chink, and the wireless access point locks in place. That's what, if you look at these screws, that's what these longer screws are with the nuts that go on to the end of the screw. So really, you can look at this big metal plate as just a giant washer. Otherwise, those nuts can get pulled right through that weak cardboard ceiling tile. So we're going to install that wireless access point, but somebody took my ladder, so I'm going to be doing this in a little more dangerous way. First off, I have to make the hole in the ceiling a little bit bigger because I've since crimped an end on that cable. There we go, and now I'll push that Ethernet cable right back through. I'm actually going to take the ceiling tile out of the ceiling. That way I can put the metal plate and the mounting right on it without having to dangle from the ceiling as I do it. First, I'll take the plastic plate on the outside of the ceiling, line it up with the hole right there, and take these long screws and push them through the holes so that I have something to line that metal plate up with on the back side. It's just cardboard with a little elbow grease, those things slide right through. There we go. Flip it around to the back side. And there's our screws to line up with our metal plate. Looks good. Get the nuts on each one of them. There we go. Now we can put this back up in the ceiling, this time fishing the Ethernet cable through the hole. Good. Now we take the wireless access point, snap in the Ethernet cable, and twist it in place. Good. Now we need to see what channel we need to configure our wireless access point to so it gets the best possible performance. I'm going to do a quick search for free wireless sniffer. And we'll get past all the ads. This one sounds good. Acrylic Wi-Fi. course, they're going to try and sell us everything, so I'll type in free. There we go. Download acrylic Wi-Fi free. Now, I've never actually used this before, so we'll find out what this Wi-Fi scanner is like. Wireless sniffers are almost all the same, so it won't take you long to figure out. This is listing all the wireless networks that are within range, so I'm definitely in a busy area. First thing I'm going to do is sort it by the strength. RSSI stands for Received Signal Strength Indication. So by sorting it that way, I kind of flush out these really weak networks that probably aren't causing me much issue at all. And I get down to the real ones, and you can see anything that I see with an RSS of negative 55 or greater, essentially the closer you move to zero, the better your signal is, could cause me an issue. Now, I know because I've set it up, the wireless access point that I'm running has the SSIDs, that's the service set identifier, or essentially the name of the wireless network, of Resolution Tech, Guest Wi-Fi, and SD. I know all three of those are mine, and you can see they're all coming from the same wireless access point because I can look at the MAC address and see they're all being generated by the same device. When it comes to the wireless network, it will vary the first couple characters of the MAC address, but looking at the last 6 characters is a sure sign giveaway that this is all coming from the same wireless access point. And I can see right here, chink, chink, and chink, those are all coming from the same place. So how do we get so many wireless networks out of one access point? Well, first off, I've defined different wireless networks for different purposes. Resolution Tech is the name of the company. Guest Wi-Fi is the one that's obviously used for guests. And SD is a network that we're using here for testing purposes. Now, if you look at the channel right next to those, notice it's 6, 6, 6. We have the same channel all coming from the same access point, and that's normal because this is the 2.4 gigahertz space. If I look up a little bit more, I have the same networks, Guest Wi-Fi, Resolution Tech, and SD, that have this 57 plus, let's make this a little bit bigger, 161, 57 plus 161, 50. You see all these right here, right? That's the 5 gigahertz space. And what we're doing is combining multiple channels together to get more bandwidth. You see how this one has a higher rate of transmission, 300 megabits per second versus the 216 on the 2.4 below. Now notice this. I don't know who these guys are. V2 Trading. That is a neighboring organization, and they must be right next door because they have a signal strength that's almost as powerful as the wireless access point sitting right outside of my office. And take a look right there. They're messing with us. They're combining a whole bunch of channels together, 149, 53, 57, 161, into one giant stream of wireless bandwidth, 1,300 megabits per second. That's crazy, but they are tromping right on our 5 gigahertz channels and thus really messing with our signal. So I'm going to open the interface for the wireless access point controller. This is actually software that controls all the wireless access points in our building. We just installed this one right here, US 3001 AP03. Now I'm not going to dive deep into the configuration of the controller, the setup, or adopting the wireless access point so it reports this because that's all vendor specific. If you go to Cisco, if you go to Ubiquiti, if you go to Netgear, it's all going to be different, but they all have the same principles. What are the names of your wireless networks, as in the SSIDs, and what is the channels that are used for each one of the frequencies? So I'm going to come down here to the wireless LANs for that wireless access point, and I can see right there, there's the Guest Wi-Fi, Resolution Tech, SD. Those are the same ones that we saw inside of the wireless sniffer. But what I want to control now is the radios. I want to say, here's the channels that we're using. Notice right now they're both set to auto. Now, we got lucky when it came to the 2.4 gigahertz and it chose channel 6, which is not overlapping with that V2 Trading company next door. They're sitting on channel 11. But what's to say if we have a power outage that's going to end up the same way? I'm going to take this and drop it down to channel 6 on the 2.4 gigahertz. And then on the 5G radio, notice we have the channel width. This is how many channels do you want to consume. HT20 is essentially one channel of the 5 gigahertz space. HT40 is 2 channels of the 5 gigahertz space. Now you can see those V2 Trading guys have probably a little beefier wireless access point. Looks like they're using an Apple wireless access point that supports combining not just 2 channels like we're doing, but 4 channels together in one giant stream. Now, that's great if you need a really high bandwidth capacity, but you're really eating up your channels and thus limiting your flexibility if you want to add multiple wireless access points. Regardless, we've got to get our wireless access points out of that same space. So I'll come over here to the channel and I'll say, let's drop down into the low range. Notice they're consuming all 4 of these channels up here. I'm going to drop down to 36. Cue the changes and apply. Now that wireless access point has gone into provisioning mode, so it's resetting itself up. And we should be able to drop back to that wireless scanner or the sniffer and see those channels change as soon as that happens. There it goes. Check it out. We're now in the 36 plus 40 channel space, completely avoiding these guys over here at the V2 Trading. I think you've got the idea now. I'm going to install the other WAP at the short company behind the scene. Now, I said at the beginning, you will be able to select, install, and perform basic channel selection on a wireless access point. Here's how we're going to prove that. I'd like you to go on an expedition and search the web for a wireless access point for your facility, your home or office. If it's truly theoretical, one that is make-believe. If it's something that you can actually do, you're preparing yourself for the practical section right ahead. Locate a WAP that is 2.4 gigahertz only, and then also do a dual band WAP, one that supports both frequencies. I'd like you to take them and list the benefits and pricing around each one of them. I would suggest a UniFi, that's actually Ubiquiti's access point, Cisco Meraki, Aruba, Netgear, and then everything else just kind of falls into the pile of consumer grade stuff. Keep in mind, some of these you'll have to buy a subscription for, like Cisco Meraki. Some of them you'll have to set up a software controller for, like UniFi. That's the one that I used. Key point, remember PoE. If you find a really cheap wireless access point, chances are it won't support PoE, so you may end up having to run power in your ceiling, which ends up ruining any cost savings you would have had in the first place. Then I want you to do it. Purchase the WAP, install it, and set it up. Configure an SSID and perform manual channel selection after you examine what other competing wireless networks are in the area. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.